Hi everyone, and welcome to our Year 11 information video. My name's Mr. Stewart. I'm the year patron for Year 11 this year, and I'm really looking forward to working with all the students in Year 11 this year with their academic studies, but also with any pastoral issues. In the background you can see our senior building, the Flynn building. This is the area where Year 11 now get to hang out during break times, and it's also the building where my staff room is. So if there are issues, they can come and talk to me there. I'm going to open in prayer, and then I'll hand you over to Mr. Burns. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for this college and for all the staff that you've provided here. And Lord, we thank you so much for all the students in Year 11. And I just pray now as they think about the year ahead, that you would help them to develop good study habits and to focus on achieving their best. And I pray that you'd help the staff and parents of the Year 11 students, that we would be able to be a great support and encouragement to them as well throughout this year. Amen.
Very warm welcome to our Year 11 parents and our students as we commence our information evening. There's quite a lot of information that you're going to receive tonight, but it's all very important, and I encourage you to listen carefully to that. Stage 6 is certainly an exciting time for students as they commence their senior time here at the college, and that time comes with responsibility but also increased independence, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we continue through this presentation. You would be very much aware of the college distinctives now. They form very much a part of who we are here at the college, and more recently we have sought to unpack those with our educational framework. And our Stage 6 students, the educational framework will really underpin a lot of what happens both inside and outside of the classroom. You can see there on the slide in front of you that our educational framework has 5 fairly key areas that we're going to form the basis of a Stage 6 education here at Wellbeing. The first is that we really strive for our students to be purpose-driven. We, as Christian teachers here, have a real clear sense of purpose for our places in the world, and we want to really encourage our students to develop that same sense of purpose. We want our students to be motivated learners. We really encourage them to be engaged in their learning, to be taking the opportunities that are presented to them, to be really seeking feedback from their teachers, and really using that feedback to direct what they do with their time here in Stage 6. There's going to be plenty of opportunities over the next 2 years for students to be leaders and to really demonstrate that caring capacity for the students around them. We see all Stage 6 students here at the college as leaders, and we really want them to be looking out for one another. It can be a challenging time, Stage 6, and so as students work through the next 2 years, we really encourage them to look out for one another, just to be touching bases with each other and really developing those meaningful relationships. I know my time through the HSC, I have some of my best memories of my friends then, the way we rallied together and really supported one another. So that's an important part of a Stage 6 education here. Self-regulation is another important component of our framework. We really want our students to be resilient, and we're developing the skills through the pastoral care program here, as well as Christian studies and other initiatives that helps to develop that resilience in our students. It's a challenging time. There's going to be ups and downs, and so resilience is a really important component of what happens here. As students leave Stage 6, we really want them to have a clear direction as to where they're going. So future focused forms the last of the areas of our educational framework. We want our students to be aspirational. The skills that we're developing are broad skills and are going to help them to be problem solvers, going to help them to innovate and to be creative in whatever the endeavours they choose to do beyond the college. I really encourage Year 11 to look for the opportunities, not just inside the classroom, but also outside the classroom, that's going to help them to give them that clear direction as to what the future will hold for them as they leave the walls of Wellbeing in 2 years' time. While it doesn't form one of the distinctives or one of the aspects of our educational framework, expectations are a really important driver of success across Stage 6, and it's a focus area for us here in the college. We have high academic expectations for the students here. We really want our students to strive for academic excellence, and that doesn't necessarily mean that all students are going to achieve a Band 6 or are capable of achieving a Band 6, but excellence and expectation is about each student achieving their potential. And I'm going to show you shortly a couple of graphs which illustrate that expectation that we have on students. As part of our HSC analysis, we undertake some fairly rich analysis of the data that comes through from our HSC results, and this helps to inform what happens here at the college. The graph that you can see there is what we call a value-added graph. The value-added graph looks at the students' results from Year 10, and we track those results across to their HSC, their final HSC results. On that graph, you can see that there's some tram lines, as well as some squares and some dots. Now, we want our students to achieve or exceed what we consider to be their value-added benchmark. For a student to achieve their value-added benchmark, they would fall within those tram lines. To exceed the value-added benchmark, they achieve beyond those tram lines. For our 2019 value-added results, they were very good, and we had most of our students achieve just inside or very, very close to what we would consider to be a student's value-added benchmark. Moving forward to our 2020 results on the following graph, you can see that we're continuing to raise expectations on student achievement, and the 2020 cohort was very, very, very good HSC results in terms of their value added. In fact, I think we had about 95% of students achieve or exceed what's considered to be their value added benchmark. So what we would expect them to achieve in the HSC. So the current Year 11 students will be putting processes in place to really help you to strive to achieve your value-added benchmark. And so I encourage you to listen very carefully to the other speakers this evening as they give you some direction as to how you can best achieve the results that you're capable of over the next 2 years. For those parents who are returning and have had Stage 6 students move through the college previously, you'd be familiar with this diagram, and we see that there are 3 areas that really contribute to Stage 6 success. The first there is the culture here at the college. We have a strong learning culture, and we really encourage our Year 11 students to embrace that. The Flynn Library is open each afternoon for our Year 11 and 12 students to access, and I encourage you to make use of that. We often have teachers in there that are able to give extra assistance. And I would say that our teachers here are particularly dedicated. They really do want to work one-on-one with each of you to help you achieve the success that you're capable of. The second area there that I'll refer to is the home environment, and that's a really important consideration. Parents, we really encourage you to help set up an area of the home where the students can focus, that's distraction-free, that's technology-free. It's important to have some boundaries around technology use. It's a very difficult thing to self-regulate technology use, and so it's important that parents, that you assist students in that. We also encourage you parents to have high expectations on what your child can achieve. That's a really important consideration as well. The third area there is the individual, and you students play a really big part in the success that you're going to achieve over the next 2 years. I've mentioned the importance of resilience. It's really important that you personally have high expectations on what you're able to achieve over the next 2 years, and that you really seek to look for what's going to motivate you as you move through the next 2 years. Having a goal, having something to work towards can be a really strong motivator. And as I spoke to you as you began your time here in Stage 6, the importance of that consistent approach to everything you do. It can seem like a little roller coaster ride the next 2 years. The straighter that you can keep that roller coaster ride by being as consistent as you can be is going to be most beneficial for you to achieve the results that you will want to achieve. I just want to touch on college lines of communication. As you're aware, we have really two distinct aspects to what happens here in the college. The first is teaching and learning. And so I really encourage you to be proactive in touching bases with your teachers. That's a really important thing, that you are touching bases with them regularly. Look, if there are concerns that you have with your teachers, then that's important that you go and have a chat to the teaching and learning coordinator. They're the second line of communication here at the college. The third is the director of teaching and learning. So that's Mrs. Evans at the moment, and I'll be moving back into that role when Mr. Norman starts in term 2. So if there are of the concerns that are of a significant nature, or you don't feel that you have been able to get an adequate response from either the class teacher or the teaching and learning coordinator, you're welcome to come and speak to the director of teaching and learning. For those more serious matters, it would be then communicating through the deputy headmaster and then finally to the headmaster. For our pastoral care concerns, the roll call teacher is a great starting point before speaking to the year patron or the assistant year patron, Mr. Stewart and Mrs. Bailey. Your senior school pastoral care coordinator would be the next point of call, which is Mr. Van Netten at the moment, and he will be able to assist you in many areas. If the area of concern has not been resolved and you need to take that to another level, then you would speak to Mr. Toland, who is the Director of Pastoral Care. And once again, for those very significant matters that haven't been resolved early on, I'd encourage you then to contact the Deputy Headmaster and the Headmaster. Just like to make you aware of a couple of updates in the college. The first is the primary building, the Cornby Cottage, being open, which is wonderful. That was ready to go for day one for our primary students. The second is I really encourage you to download the Edumate app if you haven't as yet had a chance to do that. That's where communication is going to occur, and you have the opportunity to approve absences through that app. Another point is an application for student leave or exemption. We really encourage our Stage 6 students to be at school for as many days as possible. We know that direct and explicit instruction and opportunity to engage with the teachers is most beneficial to the education of your child. But for those circumstances where you do need to apply for leave, it's important that you do that through the right channels, and that's through seeking a student leave or exemption form from student admin. Now that form needs to be submitted if you're going to be absent, or your child's going to be absent for 5 or more days from the college. And it does require you to do that in advance so that the teachers of your child are able to provide some direction around the work that's going to be missed, and so that your child is not falling behind on their work here at the college. On that note, I'd like to commend the rest of the presentation to you. I encourage you to listen carefully to what is being communicated, and should you have any concerns, please communicate those with us nice and early, and I look forward to engaging with both you and your child over the next 2 years of their education journey here at Wallandilly. Thank you.
Good evening everyone, my name's Kelly Evans and I'm the Acting Director of Teaching and Learning. What you'll hear about tonight is some important elements as your child enters into the next level of education. Entering into Stage 6 for some of the students could be the first of your family, and hence why we need to go through some of the requirements when we're now at the pointy end of their educational experience. One of the things I wanted to remind students of is to make sure they are on their Students Online account, which is issued by NESA. If you have a look on the slide, students will be given a student number as well as a PIN. It's important that they're regularly checking this account. On this account, they'll find information about their ROSA transcript as well as information on their HSC timetable when it comes to examinations in 2022. If we look at our pathway forward, students have gone through Year 9, Year 10, and we're now at, as I said, the Stage 6, the Year 11 and Year 12 element of the educational experience. At the end of Year 12, students could possibly, depending on their pattern of study, end up with an ATAR. But at the end of Year 11, they will receive what we call a Record of Student Achievement, or ROSA. The ROSA will give students a grade on each of the subjects that they have studied, and that's issued at the end of the course. As you can see from the slide, they are able to download a copy of their transcript on their student's online account, and it also indicates a number of hours that they have studied during the Stage 5 or Year 9 and Year 10 curriculum. What I specifically want to talk to students and parents about today is the assessment information booklet. Now, that was issued during week 5. It's really important that students read it, and if you didn't receive one, to see Mr. Stewart or Mr. Van Etten, who have spares. All of the college's assessment policy is based on principles in this booklet, and we are also having to follow NESA rules and regulations in regards to this. The first thing I need you to be aware of is the eligibility requirement to begin the HSC. So the first thing students must do is they must have satisfactorily completed the preliminary study, which includes 12 units. NESA also requires students to apply themselves with diligence and sustained effort, complete tasks required for the assessment program, and achieve some or all of the preliminary course outcomes. And it's really important that if you don't submit assessment tasks, you could possibly be at risk of receiving an N award for a course, and that will prevent you from continuing on into Year 12. Attendance is critical. We know that best learning occurs when students are in classrooms, face-to-face teaching. NESA does not mandate attendance requirements. However, the headmaster does have the right to determine that a student perhaps have not met the course criteria completion if they have not attended school enough. We know that in order to achieve face-to-face input is important, and consistency to get the most out of both Year 11 and Year 12 is needed. Assessment. Why is assessment important? Assessment is the process in which it assists student learning. It provides information on students' progress. It provides evidence on the satisfactory completion of a course, and it helps us to report on the achievement at the end of the course. We know in assessment tasks we need to have a variety, because we know that not all students learn in the same way. So therefore, an assessment task could take the form of multiple shapes. It could be an essay, an in-class task, a research assignment, practical project, portfolio, or even a musical performance. What's important, however, is the feedback that is given to students. What kind of feedback might a student receive after submitting an assessment task? A teacher could provide direction to the whole class. They might provide individual comments and reflect on their strengths and how they could improve in future. Feedback may also include peer and self-assessment, as well as self-reflections. It could be in a written, audio, or digital annotation. There could be a discussion on work samples. Feedback is really important to move forward in terms of your learning and getting better at those outcomes, but that you perhaps are not so good at. Common question that is usually asked is, can I submit a draft of my formal assessment task before the due date for feedback from my teacher? The answer to that is yes. We strongly encourage students to get feedback before assessment tasks are due. However, the college policy is it must be submitted at least 3 days before the task is due, and you can only get feedback on an assessment task once. You cannot go back multiple times on the same assessment task. At the end of Year 11, students will receive a ROSA, and on this ROSA transcript will be an A to E grade that is provided for all courses except for VET subjects, and is based on the Common Grade Scale. These grades are based on both their formal and informal assessment tasks. It is submitted by the school to NESA, and it looks at monitoring the fairness and consistency between schools. So that means a student studying PE at Newcastle who receives an A for their PDH PE work, and a student who receives an A at Wallandilly Anglican College means that their we're ensuring a fair and consistent approach to their level of achievement. So grades are based on student performance in assessment tasks that are set by the school. The preliminary course common grade scale can also be found on the NESA website, and also we've printed it in your assessment booklets. As you can see on the screen here, the common grade scale goes from a higher order thinking level right down to a relatively low order thinking level. Moderation is important. So as I said, NESA is really looking at to ensure there's consistency across schools. To receive an A compared to a B, we can see that a student in this particular course in the common grade scale has an extensive knowledge or content, highly developed skills, creative and critical thinking skills, perceptive analysis and evaluation, and communicates complex ideas. Or a student who's only operating at perhaps a B level, only has a thorough knowledge of content and understanding, applies well-developed skills, can demonstrate creative and critical thinking, and clearly communicates complex ideas and information. So moderation is really important and is NESA's way of ensuring, as I said, consistency. Otherwise, it would be quite easy for teachers to give all of their students full marks in their internal assessment. Why is ROSA moderation important? Raw marks and grades are obtained in different ways in each school. Assessment tasks vary in style and level of difficulty both within and between schools. And to ensure an A at Wallandilly is the same as an A at that school in Newcastle. In our assessment policy, we have quite a lot of detail around illness and misadventure. So please make sure you take the time to look at this section of the assessment policy and be aware of any application forms you may need to fill in. So illness and misadventure is needed for students who are absent for a partial or full day before or during an assessment task. So if a student has a partial or full absence the day before a task is due, they will need to fill in a illness or misadventure form. If they are absent on the day of the task, they will also need to fill in this form and return it on the very next day that they are at the college. We need to remind students that computer issues and technology issues are not reasons to fill in an illness and misadventure form. And any sickness needs to be accompanied by a doctor's certificate. If an absence is known, an application for extension needs to occur through completing an illness or misadventure form at least 3 days prior to when the task is due. And NESA warning letters are available for students who do not complete coursework and/or assessment tasks. If students are concerned with the process in which marks are awarded, then you do have the right to appeal, and this appeal needs to be made in writing to the Teaching and Learning Coordinator. Students are reminded that a 0 mark will be recorded if they do not hand their assessment task in on time. However, the task does still need to be completed. They may also risk receiving a NESA warning letter, which could result in an end determination. In the college assessment policy, we have quite detailed information on malpractice. Malpractice could include using someone else's words, ideas, designs, or work in projects and performance tasks without giving acknowledgement to their original source. It could also involve paying someone to write or prepare material. It could involve breaching school exam rules, cheating in a HSC exam, using non-approved aids in an assessment task, giving false reasons for not handing in work by the due date, or helping another student to engage in malpractice. Penalty associated with malpractice will depend on the degree to which a student has made an original contribution to the task. So please make sure you read this element in the assessment policy. Warning letters and end determination. So failure to meet course requirements will result in an end determination warning letter to be issued. Students are given the chance to redeem themselves, and if 2 end warning letters are issued, then they may be receiving an end determination for the entire course, and this could prevent them from entering into Year 12. So basically, we're really encouraging students to make a sustained effort and apply themselves with diligence to all their coursework. They are required to follow the course as outlined by NESA, They must achieve some or all of the outcomes of a course, and they must complete all coursework and/or assessment tasks.
All right, so I have Ethan here, who's also our college captain, and I'm just going to ask him a few questions about what worked well for him in Year 11. So, Ethan, do you want to step us through a bit of your study and routine that you found helpful in Year 11?
Yeah, so my study routine in Year 11 was really sort of founded on what I sucked at. I'm not naturally great at maths, and I chose advanced. So I ended up setting aside an hour at home for every class that I did. And it was a pretty big commitment, to be honest, but it was really useful for me to sort of develop a pattern where I would get home from school. I get home at like 3:30, so I'd get home, chill out till 4, do an hour of maths, and that would sort of get me into the headspace of doing whatever work came next. So I generally aimed for like 2 hours in Year 11, and I thought that was more than enough to get ahead on some of my assessments and really keep, like, it's an achievable goal, 2 hours, and it was just really easy to keep on hitting that mark after school, and I'd feel good about myself and then chill out until, you know, whenever I went to bed after 6 o'clock. Yeah.
So that was 2 hours per day?
Yep.
And was that in addition to anything on the weekends?
Yeah. So on the weekends, I'd generally hit maybe 3 hours a day. That's just because I had more time and I had to sort of shuffle that around with work and hang out with friends, all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Great. And did you do assessments in that time, or did you find you had to manage your time differently?
Yeah, I generally got some sort of, like I'd sort of shuffle it around in my head. Like when an assessment came up, what I'd do is I'd write in my diary, I'd break it up into how many weeks there was until the assessment was due. And then I'd sort of go, you know, if I've got 5 weeks, then I'd do 20% of the assessment every week. And so that I was finished by the time I had to hand it in.
Yeah, nice. Sounds like a good mathematical way to approach it,
like,
to get it in on time.
Sometimes it's going to be harder to like break it up that neatly. But I just do pieces of it every week, and I just had to spend 1 day a week on it sometimes. And
nice.
Really stress-free way of doing assessments.
That sounds really helpful. Did you get any teacher feedback towards assessments and things like that?
Yeah, if I was feeling like I didn't know what I was being asked, I'd send them a paragraph and say, is this what you're looking for? Or asking for exemplars is a really good way to figure out what the right approach is, because for some things, like, you don't know what the tone is, you don't know what the precedent of a good student does, and so an exemplar is a really cool way to demonstrate how to conduct the assessment.
So let's just talk a little bit about the overall routine. So run us through, what subjects did you do in Year 11 first?
Yeah, I did Advanced English, Extension English, Advanced Maths, Modern History, Legal Studies, Economics, and Biology.
Yeah, well.
So 13 units.
So pretty content heavy and...
Yeah, really, lots of essays.
Yep.
Lots of essays, yeah.
So run us through a little bit of your time management strategies, and I guess what did you do to perhaps balance your time so that you got some downtime and personal wellbeing in there?
Yeah, I really aimed to... I put most of my time where I struggled the most. So I don't struggle that much in English and history, so I didn't put as much time in that as I did in legal and economics, where it's obviously really content-heavy stuff and all these abstract ideas. So the way I'd balance it is I would do the stuff that I struggled with first, like maths and legal studies, whatever, and then I would do the stuff I was good at, because I'd do it quickly at the end, and then I'd just relax.
Yeah.
You know.
What sort of things did you find helpful with relaxing to get that downtime?
Yeah, I learned a lot about relaxing actually, because like in Year 10 I thought relaxing was like watching YouTube or lying around or doing something. But sort of halfway through Year 11 I realised that it wasn't really relaxing, it was just distracting. And so what I started doing was I'd get home and get out of my uniform ASAP. And then I'd just go sit outside, like we've got a hammock in our backyard, and I'd just lie in that for a bit. Like trying to get myself away from indoors and just try and really put a clear full stop on the school day so I can start with a capital letter on homework, I guess.
Yeah, wow. That sounds like a really helpful routine, because one thing I found talking to students is often getting stuck in electronic forms of media is
Yeah.
often not helpful to
It's
clear that headspace.
It's a pratfall. I still get caught in it very regularly.
Yep.
But the days when I remember that I have a way of dealing with it are often the most productive.
Yep. That's a really helpful reflection, Eth. So in hindsight, having done year 11, is there anything that you reflecting on sort of wish you knew or are really glad that you did?
Yeah, totally. This is kind of embarrassing. I didn't know what study notes were until the end of term 1. They sound really sort of evident, but I didn't know what they were. And I didn't do them because I'd sort of gotten through most of school just based off raw memory. Like you can do that until year 11. But if I had A, known what a study note was earlier, and B, actually realised how kind of useful they are, I think there's a bit of a missed opportunity there in year 11. Because I think that it's really easy to think that, you know, you'll be fine, you'll be all right. And you probably will, but there's just really simple ways to maximise your time so you can maximise your marks later on.
Yep. You mentioned you were working a little bit in year 11.
Yeah.
How did you manage that, and did you have to make any sort of sacrifices to maintain your study goals?
Yeah, I was in a fortunate position because I work for this really small cafe that's struggling. So when I work, they've got like 3 people that aren't family. And only one of those people is on every day. So I work like maybe 4 hours a week.
Yep.
And that's just really easy to deal with.
Yeah.
Because 2 hours on Saturday, 2 hours on Sunday. I often try and knock out all my work before work. I do all my schoolwork because work starts at 12 or 1 usually.
Yeah.
So I try and get it all done so that I can go to work and then relax for the rest of the weekend. And it's also useful because there aren't a lot of social events before 12 o'clock. I find like most of when you're hanging out with friends in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So yeah, patterns and habits are probably the easiest way to be proactive and productive.
Yeah. That's encouraging that you're balancing a really intense workload, achieving it and doing all your study notes, but you're still finding some downtime.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think it's actually really easy to chill out. Like, I don't know, in my experience, I've actually found it harder to switch off. I guess that's because of who I am. But I think that when you have an opportunity to sort of delegate in your mind, this time's for work, and then you can feel more like gratifying when you're relaxed, like separate it in your head, I guess.
Yeah, totally. And I think, a lot of year 11 students enter the senior years thinking to succeed in the HSC, they have to have no life.
Yeah.
So it's encouraging hearing, that it is actually more beneficial to balance a good work routine with a balanced life, and those things work together.
It totally is. And the funny thing is, everybody tells you that. But sometimes you just have to realise it for yourself for it to actually change.
Yeah, that's really good. All right, lastly, Ethan,
Okay.
is there any or 1 or 2 tips or your top tip for year 11 that you could give?
I think my top tip for year 11 is to see it for what it is. It's a practice ground for you to figure out what works best for you, and it's an opportunity for you to safely fail. Year 11 is an opportunity for you to push yourself out of your comfort zone and try new things, so that you can really nail down what your technique is for year 12.
Yep. That's awesome. Thanks, Ethan.
Not a problem.
Cheers.
Thanks very much.
Hello again, Year 11. I'm just going to run through a few things under the banner of thriving in Stage 6, which is Year 11 and 12. So as many of you know, I'm Mr. Van Etten and I'm the Senior Pastoral Care Coordinator. So my points will focus on the well-being of students, and I'll also consider some strategies that you as parents can help with as well. So as we heard earlier tonight with Ethan, in that interview that I ran with him, it's all about finding the right balance and finding what works well for you. So one of those things in the slide here is study. So finding out the type of study that works for you, finding out how you can create the best type of study notes unique to your subject, and liaising with your teachers and peers to find the best balance for that. Exercise and diet is a key one, because as we know, a healthy body equals a healthy mind. Getting the right amount of sleep, and this is one that we all know to be true, but many people don't follow through with for a variety of reasons. So if I can emphasize one key one there, finding the right routine that gives you a good pattern of sleep is essential. Considering your part-time work, this is one a lot of students can overcommit to for a variety of reasons, and I would just encourage a bit of a consideration and a conversation with your parents regarding that, so that you find the right balance where your HSC isn't compromised, but you can also partake in part-time work if that's something that you're wanting to do. And I think a good boss should be understanding of the Year 12 predicament, and you can be in discussions with them to find the best solution for all parties. This next one is called relationships, and that I'm not going to sit here and tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but all I would say is consider what's best for you in this time of Year 12. Can be a lot of pressure, a lot of demands, and a lot of time required. So it is something to just consider how you would like to proceed in the best way forward and what steps you might need to take in order to get the best possible outcome and balance your time in those situations. As we heard from Ethan, relaxing and the right type of relaxing is one of the most important things for balance. So the mistake that some senior students make is thinking that they just need to spend all their time studying in order for success. But as Ethan encouraged us earlier in this session, the best type of study actually comes when your mind can be cleared. So finding that time to clear your mind before you begin study is actually really important, and I'd attest to that personally as well. All right, the next little section here I've got is called time management. So avoiding study distractions. This is a big one for the youth of today. So first of all, it's good to understand that energy levels equal better focus. So considering your brain training and making things happen so that you give yourself the best shot for study, so that your memory is going to be active and you're going to actually remember what you're studying, but also giving your brain time to debrief and then get back into gear as you need to. So there's the ABC that you can do to ignore distractions is awareness, breathing deeply, and choice. All right, so being aware of the distractions around you, taking that time to pause, take some deep breaths, and then choosing the best way to study moving forward. As we discussed, knowing the difference between working and relaxation, and I like the way Ethan actually put it there in terms of metaphorical full stop, so that there's a clear break between school and working at home and whatnot. So you give yourself that break so you don't feel guilty, but also considering the type of break that you have. So not just jumping on social type things and consuming media, but also giving yourself some time outdoors and exercise and whatnot. Limiting access to your phones and devices is a critical one, and there's a variety of helpful strategies, such as just giving your phone to your parents or putting it in a different room for a period of time just to remove the distraction. There's a variety of apps which can help you control the use of those devices as well. But that's definitely something to purposefully consider, because I think if it's not considered, the alternative is that we'll naturally go back to those devices if we haven't purposefully thought of an alternative. Turning off internet access, obviously it's needed for a lot of study and things to do with schoolwork, but considering how you could moderate it, or if you were doing a practice essay or something, for example, removing those devices or access can be quite helpful. Noting there, headphones can be helpful. My personal take on that would be often if there's lyrics in the music, it can be hard for your brain to focus on another thing because it's trying to decode and listen to the words in the lyrics, so considering the type of music can be helpful. And then creating a bit of a checklist for what you need. Just as a heads up, perhaps more for parents, Mrs. Evans and myself are running a bit of a follow-up to the Elevate Education seminar that the students partook in recently, and that'll follow up with some of the skills that we're running through tonight. We've had our first couple of sessions already, and that's been rolling out well, encouraging the students to take ownership of their learning and giving them some helpful strategies moving forward. All right, the next thing I'd like to touch on is teacher-student relationships. Now, it's something in the junior years that maybe it didn't seem cool to chat to your teachers, but in year 11 and 12, the role of the teacher becomes a little bit more critical. to success in the HSC. So there's the obvious respect and rapport that we build with the teachers, and those relationships tend to evolve as you mature and relax into your senior years. Being high in communication, so if you're ill or have a need for something, that you're communicating that with the teacher. Getting feedback on your work, we know that that is one of the best ways for you to improve your marks and succeed. So being proactive with that and not waiting for the teacher to hunt you down. Using your study periods well. They're not free periods, they're study periods. So my thought is, think of them in terms of what you can accomplish here at school, and that can perhaps free up some of that relaxation time at home. And we also have some helpful resources with the Homework Club that runs on Wednesdays, where we have, in some cases, past students that can be of assistance, and we've got some teachers that can also help you out with things there. But if I can encourage you on one thing with that topic, do use your teachers knowledge and experience that you've got at your fingertips there, and be in communication with them if you don't understand something, or if you're not sure how to get the best marks. So for example, the type of study notes that you could be doing in that subject, just ask them, and I'm guaranteed that they'll have some guidance for you in that area. All right, the next slide there is just on student relationships. So rapport that students have with each other is critical to HSC success. So this we do well and I do well concept is really important. It's not a competition for who can get the top mark in that sense. It's a community effort and it's a group effort. And what you'll find is if the whole group is doing well, then you will do well. Okay, the strongest cohorts that we've had at this college have worked together and built each other up. And if everyone gets good marks, then that benefits everyone, including you. Having pride in belonging, so being a part of the community here at Wallandilly and the culture that we represent. And part of that is well-being. So for example, we had the Year 12 dress-ups recently at the swimming carnival, and there's plenty of great things that you've got to look forward to with that as well. And each class is a team. So that could be as simple as sharing your notes with someone, helping someone that's away, helping them understand things, forming a bit of a study group, or assisting them in a variety of ways. All right, some tips for student wellbeing. I'm just going to run through these subheadings here. Number 1, treat yourself like a friend. Number 2, own your own goals. Number 3, surround yourself with a supportive squad. 4, focus on what you can change. And 5, celebrate the small things. All right, and that's just a nice little package of wellbeing for the students. All right, I've got one more section, and this is tips for parents. So a lot of parents, a common question is, how can I best support my child? Some of you might be the parent of your first child going through Year 12. Some might have had a few going through already. But I'd like to just run through a few helpful tips that we've found to be useful in the past. So the 3 Ps, patience, persistence, and perspective. So firstly, aim to build a supportive network. So good relationship with your child, supporting them in terms of study groups and things like that. Relationships and communication with the college, as well as any wider networks. Making time to communicate with your son or daughter, to hear them out, to maybe debrief on the challenges of the day, and little things like that can go a long way. Keeping connected, that can be an email to myself or the relevant year patron. Staying informed, so one of the main forms of communication at the moment is through the Waratah Weekly, as well as other things that get pushed out through the app and online. Negotiate your expectations around study, free time, and leisure activities. So rather than a free-for-all or go work it out yourself approach, have a chat perhaps with your child around what their guide is for study, how they're going to use their free time and leisure, so that they can be purposeful, and then you can support them in the purposeful nature of that activity, rather than just, I guess, hoping for the best, and where that can often backfire a little bit for the child. Highlighting strengths and celebrating successes. Celebrating the small wins can really bolster self-esteem and be beneficial for students. Aiming to reduce family stresses on sons and daughters, especially around exam time. And obviously there's the external things that we can't control, but the ones that we can control and support, just to gather them in around those times and perhaps ease the pressure, that can really go a long way. And I've heard it described as a plate. So if we're holding one plate, that's not a problem. Maybe we can hold 5 or 10. But if we're trying to hold 15, 20 or 30 plates at once, then there's a limit where it gets too much. And the HSC can be a little bit like that when it's exam time and peak stress times. Those plates start piling up. And so if we can consider ways where we can reduce them, that can be really beneficial. And one of those could be family stresses. Other ones in play could be external commitments, things like part-time jobs and whatnot. Being realistic in your expectations. So supporting your child, obviously we all want the best for each student, but perhaps not setting the bar too high or creating undue expectations that will cause them to feel pressured or anxious in that area. Providing as much practical, loving support as you can, which I'm sure you'll all do in your unique ways, and encouraging your son and daughter to seek help, and whether that's through you, through the pastoral team, through the student peers and networks, and external things as well. It's a bit of a team effort, and so if we all play our part, that can often result in the best result for each individual student. The last slide there is on helpful support links. So I've put in there a few. There's Reframe, the local support groups, reachout.com, the careers that Dr. B will have spoken about, the Student Wellbeing Hub, and Headspace. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an intro into the HSC, a bit of a strategy for how to support your child, and hearing from a past Year 11 student, hopefully that was helpful as well. And as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to make contact. And we have some great teams and networks here at the college to assist in all these areas. So thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here tonight to talk to you about special provisions. So what are special provisions? Special provisions are practical arrangements designed to assist you who wouldn't be able to otherwise make a fair attempt to show what you know in an examination room. So in other words, it's a situation where we can make adjustments to allow you to show exactly what you can do under a normal circumstance. So if you've been provided with special profs in the past, so what's different now? So in the junior years, it's known as college-based adjustments, which is basically, it's been organised very differently. We can basically do whatever we need to do to assist you to show what you know in an exam or an assessment situation. But now that you're moving into Year 11, your assessments have all changed, and we have to go in line with the NESA HSC policies. So we also need a lot more official documentation, and we also need a lot more supporting evidence for these conditions that you might have. So I guess who could apply for, if you are wanting to consider applying for special provs, who can do that? Well, if you've got a permanent condition such as diabetes or learning difficulties, you can do that. And so diabetes, we'll be looking at things like you might have a phone because that's part of your treatment, but it also might be that it will be put out with the people out the front. You might have a temporary condition such as a broken arm, and you may actually have something that is ongoing such as chronic back pain. So when you're sitting for too long periods of time, we can actually look at getting some special provs for that. So what are some of the special provs that we can have? We can have extra time, rest breaks, toilet breaks. We could actually have a writer if you've got some concerns with your hand. We can have a reader if you have a low reading ability. Sometimes we can get through use of computers, but that's not the usual, but it is there as an option. We may also, as I've already mentioned, look at medical conditions such as diabetes or chronic pain to allow you to give you extra time, to allow you to stand, to move, have a special chair and all these other things. So I guess what are we asking you to do at this stage? Well, if you think you're going to consider looking at special provisions for the future, come and talk, because otherwise we can get the ball rolling and we can let you know what you need to do. We need to have all your documentation up to date, so from medical practitioners, and this will really come into handy in use when we get to Year 11 exams later this year. So if you do have any, are considering special provisions for the HSC, come and talk to your advisor, Mrs. Evans or Mr. Burns, and we'll be able to help you with that. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Dr. Rob Berlin. I'm the Careers Advisor here at Wallandilly Anglican College. As part of the Year 11 presentation, I have some information that concerns careers. So I'll start with a very simple idea, namely some questions that you might like to ask. And there's 5 questions that are particularly relevant to Year 11 students. The first one is, what do I want to do for a career? The second one, do I want to start work at the end of college or continue with further study? And then as a result of that, there's then 3 more questions. Where do I want to study? Do I have the right subjects, skills or information to enter that career? What other pathways can I use to reach my goal? Now I know you've probably read all that on the slides, but they are really important questions and you may want to come back to those at other stages. It's often the sorts of things that I chat with Year 11 students about, and it's really relevant at this stage of their development. So, how do they get information? I guess there's 3 ways that I tend to do this. The first one is the college website, second one is Canvas, and then there's myself. When you go to the college website, you'll see that there's a section that is called Learning, and if you choose that link, it goes to secondary teaching and learning, and then lastly at the very bottom of that there's a link to the careers page. When you go to that, you'll see that the website has got a lot of information that is not particularly relevant to just Wallandilly Anglican College, it's to everybody. So I call that generic or general information. Then you've got things that are going to be more wide-ranging, and they're going to be very useful things, particularly for parents, and they're going to be able to use that information to help with discussions with their own sons and daughters. Then there's Canvas. Now Canvas is something that you could easily get lost in, so you probably need a little bit of guidance from your son or your daughter, but the part that you need to be looking at is in the careers section, which is the tile on the bottom of that student resources 7 to 12 page. And in there you'll find there's an enormous range of stuff that I have put in there. So unlike the previous resource, this one is relevant just to the Wallandilly Anglican College students. And you'll notice here that I have a lot of presentations that I've given to Year 12 students last year, plus there's other information that's there as well from the universities themselves or other sources. I also put in here the weekly newsletters. Now, students can obviously upload these and very quickly can read those themselves, and of course I email copies to each of the parents. So you should be receiving this already. If there's a problem with that, please contact me, because maybe the email addresses are not up to date and I can get that fixed. Okay, Careers Advisor, what do I have to do with this? Well, my role here is, particularly with Year 11 students, I keep tabs on how their career plans are coming along. In saying that, there's also occasionally some students that are interested in doing some work experience. Maybe they didn't do that in Year 10, or perhaps they've now want a new experience they'd like to do, or they're actually interested in the idea of trying something before they head out into the world of work. Maybe they'd like an apprenticeship or something like that. They might like to try that. Then you'll also see that one of the tasks that I do is to mentor students who are doing vocational education. And there's 5 of those this year, but that's certainly a lot more than we've had for a little while. Lastly, you'll notice that the tasks that I have just in this very room are to have interviews with many of the Year 11 students. I'm nearly finished with all the Year 12s, and the next step will be to do the same thing with Year 11. And often I'll also guide them through the range of the materials that are here in the room, and they'll be able to locate written information, plus I'll show them how to use electronic information and how to access that as well.
Well, that brings us to the end of the video. There was a lot of information in there, so just to quickly recap what we looked at, Mr. Burns spoke about the educational framework and striving to achieve our potential. Mrs. Evans spoke about the assessment policy here at the college and also the NESA requirements with all of that. Mr. Van Netten spoke about wellbeing strategies so that we can thrive in stage 6. Mr. McIntosh spoke about special provisions, and if you are interested in looking into that, please make sure you contact him. And Dr. Berlin spoke about careers, and if you're interested in talking to him more about that, you can get in touch with him. There is also a sign-up sheet on the Careers Office door where you can book in a time to speak to him. Thank you again for your time. I'm really looking forward to working alongside both you as the students and parents over the coming months as we progress through stage 6. God bless.